Closed captioning for the professors is provided in part by the Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury and wrongful death law firm in Chicago.
Good customer service seems to be hard to find these days. Or does the quality of customer service depend upon how much money you make? That's the focus of our discussion today on The Professors. Joining us today to talk about customer service are Christopher Murray of the Washburn Culinary Institute at Kennedy King College, Daryl Reynolds, a professor at Trinity International University, Nick Panamitros, an attorney and professor at Kennedy King College, University of Illinois at Chicago, and Harper College, as well as Ted Williams, professor at Kennedy King College. Welcome all.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, customer service in Chicago. Is it hard to find?
Well, I would argue, obviously, yes. It's interesting because the question that you started off with was, does it depend on your income level? And the company around the country in the hospitality industry that consistently gets the #1 ranking for customer service is the Waldorf Astoria. The Waldorf Astoria. And so if you think about it.
Have any of you all stayed at the Waldorf yet?
Not in the last couple days, but.
Daryl?
I have once.
Once?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
About 15 years ago, yes.
Yeah. You need to say 15 years to stay there again, right?
Right.
So, but the point is that as I was reading in preparation for this conversation, I was thinking about and reading about sort of how they go through getting staff, and they go through this really, really stringent process to get folks who are completely of the mindset that the customer is always right and service. And I think about that compared to, say, our local Motel 6, right, in the community. You think about when people have money, they are treated better, and that's just the reality of the business world we live in. And you know, maybe that's one of the benefits of having wealth in this country, but I would make the case that customer service is good if you are in a situation where you have money to spend.
Now, I want to go back to the idea of the relationship between good customer service and employees. But Daryl, what point did you want to make?
Well, I was going to depart from that some, primarily because the idea of customer service is more driven by the organization itself than the people who are buying and selling from that organization. If from a philosophical base, the company believes that customer service is a means by which they can drive more profits, then they invest more in it. So the more higher end organizations, Waldorf Astoria, Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, to name a few in hospitality, they understand that in order for them to charge the kind of prices that they charge, they have to have the accompanying customer service. But given that fact, they know that they can drive more profits because they have customer service that is equal to that.
Yeah, but the problem with that, though, is that if there are really, there's really sort of no, well, I would say there's no recourse, but the penalties for not performing well in the area of customer service for people who are of a low income status, they're just not as significant. So on the one hand, it may very well be part of the business model, and it may be very well part of the business model for a lot of companies.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you dismiss someone who is in a different financial situation, in a significant, even they have significant resources, it's going to be much different than if you dismiss or mistreat someone who doesn't really understand, doesn't have the financial backing, and really cannot do anything significant to, prosecute you, if you will.
But Ted, you target a particular type of market, and so a higher end hotel is going to obviously target people who have more money. They're going to invest more in customer service. If you want to go to a hotel that's half the price, obviously they're not going to have employees that have graduated from any kind of school that works in hospitality, and therefore you're going to get charged less, but you're also going to get less service, most likely.
Yeah, but in the general grand scheme of things, shouldn't there be some level of expectation? Some level of expectation of...
What's a minimal level? Well, why should it be the highest standard? A minimal level expectation.
No,
that you'll be treated courteously, that you'll get in. And
Daryl is right. Daryl's right. All right. So what you have to look at is this, okay? And those who are successful in that arena, all right, is tried and true. Okay. This is what they've figured out. It's hospitality, good customer service that brings the customer back. So for those who you've spoken about, Waldorf, Ritz-Carlton, etc., they have a mantra that says, ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen, okay? No, that's transferable. Even if you have a mom and pop store, okay, what you're gonna figure out is, it's not necessarily the food that's bringing the customer back, okay? It's excellent customer service. The better the customer service is, the more apt that people are gonna visit your property.
Yeah, but see, that doesn't work, unfortunately, in the communities in which, the community I live in and the community I work in. The reality is that because there is a lack of competition in these communities, people get what they get. And that is the tragedy. And I agree with you on a certain level, but for instance, you can go to your local gas station in a poor community, you can go to your local, corner store, and consistently experience bad customer service, consistently. Yeah, and yet people come because there is one store within a 10-block radius. And so that's a real issue. Competition helps.
Yeah, but I still go back to the idea that customer service is driven by the organization itself. If the business owner tolerates low customer service, disrespect of the people who come in and out of the business, then that's what's going to be displayed to the public. However, if they come from the base that customers are important, we make more money by treating people well. It's easier for us to maintain our existing customers and to continually go out and try and bring new ones in, then that philosophy tends to be more profitable for them. So if they don't have that base, then yeah, they're very tolerant of bad customer service. But I still say it's driven by the organization, and what they tolerate ends up being put out to the public.
It is what you tolerate, but there's a level of how optimal you are also. So within that, the organization driving the model also is how optimal is your staff working, how optimal is the system. So I think you have two things going on at one time, actually.
That's true. Well, I think there are 5 major components to customer service. The first is the philosophical base that the organization works from. The second thing is the commitment, both by the management and the employees, to deliver that customer service. The third is training. Does the organization actually stop and train its people on how to deal with customers effectively? The fourth is measurement. How are we determining how well we're performing against whatever standards we have? And the last is follow-up. Once we measure and find out what we're doing, are we incorporating those learnings back into the organization to continue to perform at that level? If those things aren't in place, then yeah, you have all kind of delivery issues.
Sure.
How is it possible, especially speaking with Christopher, how is it possible to, and I am going to admittedly make a broad stroke statement.
Okay.
How is it possible to teach our students to deliver good customer service when in their communities they are often the recipient of poor customer service?
So that's a good point, because basically what you said is what you've noticed and what you're trying to measure is within a certain community. So it has nothing to do with Waldorf, right? It has to do with that community setting. So what it really is, what's really happening is you're targeting a certain community, a certain social behavior, and a certain social norm that exists, right? Now you're in school. You're within my region. You're within hospitality training. The first thing that has to be done is the hospitality that they receive from instruction, from the instructors, from administrative actions when they first enter the school, okay? Because there's an anticipation of being treated well from everyone, no matter if it's not your norm to give customer service. You expect it, okay? You want to be treated nicely, okay? So without it being part of the curriculum, you create that norm. You get them comfortable with that service. You see, once they have that comfort zone, it's much easier for them to repeat it and to follow through on it.
Yeah.
And we're talking about basic things that lead up to customer service: eye contact, acknowledging somebody's presence. Okay, you do that repetitively in a school setting, it's going to be transferred outside of that. And this is all before you break it down in theory from textbook, etc.
So it's more of an experiential learning.
Yes, it should. I mean, customer service, that type of thought process, it comes from inside, it comes from within. Okay, we are social beings, and it should be the norm to be sociable. Okay, unfortunately, based on environment where you're coming from, there are certain things that you project for security reasons.
Sure.
And so it becomes part of your being, and you carry it with you. It shouldn't have to be like that.
See, I think that you can overcome environment by training and habits. So even if it's tolerable in the environment for these bad social interactions, that the training will help you realize that you can depart from that. Once you have been trained sufficiently, if you develop certain habits, even in an environment that may be antagonistic against that, you can still perform well. You can still perform the training well in that environment. So I think you can get past it in community, low-income communities.
Sure.
Low income does not have to mean disrespectful.
No, but I'll tell you.
This is true, but that's how it's often interpreted. Now, I have to admit, I live in Auburn Gresham. I live in the hood, and I love my hood. But I know that when I first moved in, for me, I think, Ted, it's not an issue of is there a lack of customer service as much as there is preferential treatment.
Potentially, yeah.
And what I guess the example I want to make is that when we first moved to the neighborhood, you go to the store, you look like anybody else in the neighborhood. Hey, how you doing? Give me your money, boom. But then when they found out, oh, she's a professor, oh, she does this, then it's, hey, Mrs. Palacio, how are you today? Sure. But then the other person that will come in, there's no greeting whatsoever.
So what happens, I think, in that dynamic is that the customers themselves, I think, on some level, condition the businesses on sort of how to treat them. So
that's a very good point.
I think about, for instance, if you are in a particular area and you're consistently getting sort of unreasonable requests, you're getting people who are coming in who are rude to you on a consistent basis, it really is going to affect your level of customer service back to them. And so I think that that dynamic exists as well. And and it's not just like, and I agree with you, it's not just low-income communities, but when people are honestly, and you said this, you're right, they're social creatures. A lot of times we respond how we're treated.
Exactly. And I wanted to make one point also. In some of the lower income communities also, the profit margins, a lot of, in these mom and pop shops is very low. So a lot of these business owners are working, tons of hours, and their profit margin is very low. So I mean, they're under strain.
I don't know. For some of those businesses in our communities, they are making a nice dime, and it's not an issue of profit margin whatsoever. It may be for the very small business owner where you're saying it's a mom and pop shop, but for the person that does not live in that community, and they're coming in and they're making, trust me, they are walking away with a bag load of money every day.
A lot of them are also immigrant too, if you haven't noticed. A lot of these gas stations and Dunkin' Donuts and stuff. So there also could be cultural issues too.
Yeah, she makes a good point. Cultural
service.
disconnections.
Yeah.
Well, let's
different cultures have different attitudes towards.
Well, let's flip
outsiders.
the script. I want to talk about when I leave Auburn Gresham and I go downtown.
The hood.
When I leave the hood and I go downtown and I go shopping, there are certain stores that I know I just won't bother with because I know the moment I walk in, I'm immediately judged. We'll talk about racism, whatever it may be. But
you know what? I hear that a lot, and I'm going to again depart from the standard here.
All right, well, let's go.
And I think often, particularly downtown, where having dark-skinned people walk into a variety of stores downtown is no longer an issue.
Right.
I think a lot of times that has to do with what our expectations are. If you walk in with the expectation that you're not going to be treated well and you're going to look for instances where you're not, then that happens. I said I was going to depart from
we're going to depart, and so now we're going to have an Old Testament discussion.
Okay.
I disagree. I totally disagree with you. I consider myself to be a very reasonable person. I'm not snooty. I'm not stuck up. I speak to everyone. It's all good. I don't go in looking. I'm not going in like Don Quixote looking for a reason. But I do know that there are certain instances when you walk into the room and you're like, okay, this energy is not right. I'm not going to get the customer service that I expected, especially if I'm walking in and I notice that when I walk in, no one says anything. Nick walks in, hello, how are you?
Very good.
Anything
How are
I
you?
can help you with today? And you're like, are you serious? You're waiting on the floor for customer service. I'm standing at a particular shoe store. I've got a fistful of shoes. I want some help. But then somebody else behind me, hey, how you doing? Can I help you?
But it really goes back to.
So am I paranoid?
Well, actually, I think it goes back to, I don't know. Maybe you are. Maybe. I mean, no, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it definitely does.
It does
And I've
happen.
experienced
It
myself.
does happen.
I mean,
But
it happened to
But here's
Oprah.
the point. I think it's a function, once again, of what you just mentioned, of preferential treatment, where people, if people think you have something, they think you have money, they think you're somebody, they typically treat you a certain way.
No, that's
One of the
That's
things that
very true.
one of the things that I've learned, even in my family, that when I go, say, to a doctor, for instance, I always dress well when I go to a doctor, because I literally am putting my life in their hands, and I want them to have a perception of me that they need to respect me, that they should respect
But
me.
are you
and they should
enabling
care.
profiling?
I don't. Well,
Does that enable
at that
profiling?
point, I don't care.
I'm just asking.
I don't care. I mean, I've got one or two options. I can go in there with my jeans and my hoodie on, or whatever, and then or I can go in with my suit on, or something,
Ted, I agree
that's
with you.
decent.
Practicing for 23 years, when I have patients come in well dressed, it creates a better environment. It
you go.
really does. I don't.
Ding, ding.
I don't treat someone that doesn't come
1
in.
point for BC.
I'm serious. Someone
right,
that comes
1
in
point for
not
Daryl
dressed,
and
I don't
Ted.
treat them any different. But for some reason, when they come in dressed nice, it's telling me they're projecting. They're trying to tell me something.
They're
and I think
serious.
they're
Okay,
serious.
I cannot argue with that.
Respect.
Yeah.
There's something positive coming out of it. Definitely.
And I still am a believer that what you anticipate, the expectations that you hold when you walk into almost any establishment, predetermines how you anticipate you're going to be treated.
Well, let me ask you this. What's the best way to react when you believe that you are the recipient of poor customer service?
Well, I'll tell you what 40% of Americans do.
They
in this.
clown.
No, they curse the person out.
Yeah, oh, no, you
That's the
didn't.
best way to do it now. 40% of Americans just take their business elsewhere when they have a bad experience.
Exactly.
And I think that is the best situation. My father's an entrepreneur. I have done a lot of entrepreneurial work as well. And for instance, in my theater work, I've had people who've come and maybe not had the right ideal experience. And typically what I will do, and I'm sure many of you who work in business have done this as well, you bend over backwards to try to make sure that that person does not leave your establishment and then spread a bad word, because
Well,
that
that's
bad
true,
word goes
especially with
far.
the
So
one
it's
that-
better to lose money in that way, because the customer does have power.
Yes,
The
it is.
customer does have power. And then prior to us, when we were preparing for the show, the one thing I thought about is, these days you don't have to wait to go through the slow process of the Better Business Bureau. There's social media.
Yeah.
And immediately you can tweet or put on Facebook, this
Yeah.
person was good or this person was
Which
horrible.
really can be damaging to a business.
Here's something though. Okay, I think what you're identifying is that there is definitely a change in society as far as how we deal with people, as far as relationship building. We depend on technology. We depend on many different things that come in between us dealing with each other. So right now our social graces have been impaired. So it's not a natural thing that used to be back when, social customer service was just a norm. It didn't come at a price. So times have changed. Matter of fact, just the other day, I met this 92-year-old lady who she was leaving a dinner party, and she lived in Garfield Park, and she was walking out the door, and it was late at night. She said, "Okay, bye everyone, I'm going home." And I said, "How are you getting home?" She said, "She's taking the bus." I said, "You taking the bus over there? It's late at night, and you're afraid someone's going to bother you." She said, "I've never been bothered by anyone." I said, really? So she gave me her story. In short, what she said is, everybody that I come across, I acknowledge them, okay? And they feel comfortable with me. And I've never had a problem, okay? And right there, that kind of shows you just how far we've departed from that, because that's not the norm now. So when you go into a place, right, you go into a restaurant and they see you, basically they're judging how much money they're gonna make off of you. How much is this service going to cost you? Okay, and we validate it because That's how we judge restaurants, or we judge when we go out. By, you know, we spend X amount of dollars. Why we spend X amount of dollars for the same steak that we can get anywhere else, right? Because of the customer experience, right?
I agree.
So by that, you know, so there's a change in culture and society that we're looking at.
But here's an important point relating to what he's saying, is that if businesses actually understood the value of customer service, they would understand that it drives more profit. It doesn't often give a short-term return, but if you understand that you're making an investment that will be able to drive long-term profits,
loyalty.
Yes, it's much easier to keep the customers you have than to bring in new customers.
Right.
But
And
it is far more profitable.
Now, I must confess, in the days of Marshall Fields, yes, I'm still mourning the loss of Marshall Fields.
All right.
That was the one thing that always brought me back to Marshall Fields, was just the customer service. You know, you had the personal shopper, and it didn't matter how much money you made. If you wanted to request a personal shopper, it was there for you. And it kind of made you feel kind of it gave you an elite feeling. There are certain hotels that I love to frequent downtown because I love the way that they treat me when I walk in the door. But it's not just the way that they treat me, but it's the way that I see that they treat everyone else when they walk in the door as well either. Now, for me, as a customer, as a consumer, I think we have to be very aware of not just how they're treating us, but how are they treating everyone else in general. And there are times when I have seen other people who have been the recipient of poor customer service, and I have spoken up, and I said, you know, that's not right.
Yeah.
So what's your response to that?
Well, I would say, just quickly, the other thing that I just thought about as you were saying that is that you are dealing with, when you look at businesses like McDonald's, Burger King, sort of businesses are in our community that many people frequent on a daily basis. My dad, you know, is in McDonald's and he owns a couple of franchises. He's dealing with folks who are highly transient, who are typically low income and low education themselves. And what that means is that they're dealing with all the stresses of their own lives, trying to work and go to school. And so what you find typically is that you get, a lot of times when you're hiring employees, that has a significant impact on their ability to project the kind of, you know, customer service that we'd like to see. And I think that those things, as I think about it, and this is why, honestly, when I go to establishments like that, I don't get livid when they don't get my fries right or something like that, you know, because I understand the fact that this is not, you know, your ideal job for the rest of your life, and I see the stress that they go through. I did a small stint at the Olive Garden out of college for 2 weeks. I can only last for 2 weeks.
I worked at Jewel for 2 days.
Yes, 2 weeks. And it's wild, okay? And I remember...
And I quit because the lady didn't say thank you after I packed her eggs
Exactly,
so well.
But no, that's exactly...
I did. I was like, oh.
I understand that because that's exactly what happened to me. At the Olive Garden, I worked there for 2 weeks, and the manager's yelling at me back, and I'm waiting tables, and then the customers are mad, and I said, this is for the birds. And you only paying me, you know, what, $3 an hour before tips? I'm out of here, so I get it. I understand it.
Real quick, because we're rounding into the close of the conversation, I want to go back to Christopher's point. Christopher, you were talking about students and them having this customer service experience. I want to go on a slippery slope real quick. Is customer service an appropriate term in higher ed?
Yes.
Higher ed. Oh, you went there. Huh?
Yes.
Because a lot of times we talk about the student. Is it appropriate to have the ideological framework that the student is a customer?
Yes, I agree 110%.
Expand.
That's actually one of our most valuable customers right there, because everything that they take in, they will reflect. Okay, so right now, however they're treated from they come through that door, even once they participate in their lab training, lecture classes, etc. If a segment of customer service is not partnered with them, they will not take it. They will not show it. They will not reflect it.
Sure.
Okay, they're people, and so this is your opportunity to try and change course of what the environmental issues have been in their lives.
Yes.
And so, as far as yes, my background is hospitality, so it's even more important within my section.
And I agree with him. I just one caveat to that, because I agree. I try to be that way with my students. I understand, especially when you're dealing with big sort of bureaucratic establishments like schools, when students come in, they oftentimes have a very difficult time navigating the process before they even get to our classrooms. So that's a real, I understand the customer service focus. The only thing I would add to that is to say the only difference is that as an instructor, as a professor, as a teacher, we're giving them what they need, not always what they want.
Right.
And that's
Exactly.
a difference.
Touche.
And that's one of the things with that information. It depends on how the institution uses it. I mean, years ago, schools, professors' word would be final, and institutions were very rigid. I don't think it should be that way today. But some of these schools are marketing to the point where they're dropping the bar so low that I think, yeah, they're getting more business, they seem more attractive, but at the end of the day, the student's really losing out. I'm looking at some of the schools I'm teaching at and comparing to, say, 25 years ago, and I'm thinking, you know what, some of these students are not learning, as much as I learned 25 years ago.
But do you
because
think,
of that.
Do you think sometimes as referring to students as customers, does that does it at one point over empower students and kind of undercuts the authority of the faculty? Daryl?
Well, I think that's a double-edged sword in that I think the students are both customers and recipients of what the university has to
They're
offer.
students. They're not students?
But I don't think you can completely unplug from the fact that they are paying for the education. That's the important aspect of it. Yes, do they need this knowledge imparted in a certain way? Absolutely. But they are still the ones who are financing their education. So on one hand, you have to respect the fact that they're paying for it. At the same time, you have to be willing to impart the knowledge in a way that it takes hold.
Because it's a form of medicine, and sometimes it's not easy to take. And so the information has to be used properly. I agree with you.
I think, unfortunately, one of the things that we did not get a chance to address on is the role of the employee in customer service. And I think that when we're talking about the delivery of customer service, the employee has to be able to invest, as you were talking about, in the proper training and the assessment and evaluation of the employees as well.
Yes.
So everyone, thank you for a wonderful conversation, and I hope you guys get some good customer service. Thank you. That's our show for today. Join us next time on The Professors.